Okay.
You don't say.
It would be helpful if any of you know of someone that is gonna watch this on live stream, if they let you know they can't hear something or something's not working, to just like raise hand and let us know so we.
And,
Technology, we're learning as we go.
and if someone on can't hear, then you wouldn't hear what I was going to tell you. But they can always put something in the chat. But looks like everything's working.
All right. Well, if you hear otherwise, let us know. At this time, do we have any comments from patrons or guests? If you wouldn't mind stating your names.
Ian Campbell.
Lucy Henderson.
Thank you.
We are two of the high school seniors on the wrestling team this year. We have both wrestled for all 4 years and are excited to start our senior season. This year, with the addition of middle school girls wrestling, is going to be a lot of information and needs to go with for coaches. We are asking to see if we can get a third wrestling coach this year for both middle school boys, middle school girls, and high school wrestling.
As of right now, we have 22 high school students on the high school team, and with this being the first year for girls wrestling, there's going to be girls meets that coaches are going to be going to, along with JV boys, JV varsity, girls wrestling meets, and with all of those going on, there's many times that we need 2 coaches at 2 different spots, and that leaves us with not really anyone to practice with except for staff, which is great, but it'd be really nice if we could have someone that could help us with our moves. And we've even had instances where we've been at a girls' meet and we've had one coach coaching 2 different matches at once, which is really chaotic.
We've also had instances at JV and varsity meets where JV's in one gym, varsity's in the other, and we only have one coach. So then Coach Dolzek has to get a friend of his to come coach someone on the JV team. That way they can do their matches. So we're just trying to get this out there that it is kind of hard for our new coaches with the 22 high school wrestlers, 21 middle school girls wrestlers, and 18 middle school boys wrestlers to be organized and have people for their events.
So how many coaches is there total?
Right now we have 2 coaches, Coach Dolzek and Coach Sheets.
Yeah. That's a lot of students.
So we do have. Your guys' concern is an agenda item, but because it's personnel related, we'll talk about that later when we get to that point. You guys draw the short straw to represent everybody here. Thank you for coming and presenting that. The numbers are great. It is an agenda item on here that we will be addressing, so we just haven't had a chance to have the conversation, but it's really nice to hear the concerns of the ones being most impacted by it, and we're going to have that conversation this evening. So thank you for bringing that to us. I didn't mean to cut you off if I did, if you had anything more to add, but I think you gave us everything we needed for consideration. Anybody got any questions for them?
Good job.
You are welcome to stay for who knows how many hours, or you don't have to stick around with this. But we are talking about it, and I'm sure you'll find out what we figure out shortly. So thank you guys.
Good job.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for representing all your people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, let's move on. Do we have any additions to the agenda?
Yes, you do. They are listed under the agenda that is at the table. We have an additional donation that will be put under the consent agenda unless there's need for discussion. And then a resolution 2024-3 for FEMA assistance that will be item 5.5 under board issues.
All right. So the donation, all that's in the consent agenda.
It is, if you'd like to fill it out and make it its own item, you can do that as well.
I'll just talk about it before I ask for a motion, but at this time, we have a motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented with the new addition. Well, that's in the consent agenda. So that's fine.
I make the motion that we approve the meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
First and a second. All in favor? 7-0. All right, there is a new, and I'll talk about it real quick before we go to consent agenda, or we can talk about it as long as you want. I was gonna try to get this on the last one, but we had our hands full. There is a basketball uniform donation for the boys. It was to include the boys and girls, but the girls got new ones this year. This was supposed to happen last year, but there were a few reasons why some people wanted to push pause. There's a handful of private donors that want to remain anonymous, that have pooled money together, and when we were doing the coach search, that was when the boys basketball team was up for new uniforms. They're using the same ones for what, 8 or 9 years now. So when they were supposed to get new ones, we didn't have a basketball coach and it got skipped over. And there's a group of individuals, not just business owners, that have pooled money together to do that. They use me to help coordinate with Matt staff to make sure that, is he here?
He's at JV. football.
Just to make sure he had final say and approval. Bill kind of did the design of them, and then he made sure they were Keisha, followed all the rules. They're donating them. They want to remain anonymous. They will be here in time pending board approval. Just to get them caught back up, because they are
They're in bad shape.
4 years away from them, I believe. That's why I wanted to ask him. So they'll go on 12 years of, Ronner, do you know? They've been around a while.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't have the rotation.
I believe last season was the 8th year of them, and they are not due up for 4 or 5 years, because we didn't have a basketball coach when they were up and we moved on. So there's just a group of people that wanted to do that and asked me to help bring this to the table. I'm not gonna lie, I did throw in on them after I learned of it, but I mean, neither here nor there. So we have to decide if we want to approve that donation. It was originally gonna include the boys and girls all together, but the girls got new ones ordered this year. So we're just approving the boys to bridge the gap since they missed out on that opportunity. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Do we need to,
Do you have a picture? Okay.
does this need to be approved by itself, or can it just go into
It's
the?
part of the consent agenda as a donation, but I figured I'd just offer a little insight since it got thrown on us. Not thrown on us, but there wasn't enough information to do it sooner. But in order to make sure they're here and ready on time, today is the day if it's something we want to do.
Well, I know when it came to the girls wrestling uniforms a while ago, because it's just after trying to get those in on time.
These will be here on time pending our approval today if it's something you want to do. And I don't see why we would turn down a donation. There's also a lot of conversations going on by a lot of different individuals to take care of some of the other dated ones as well. And anytime private money wants to do their thing, this is a pretty good group of individuals. And I'm just gonna leave it at that because they made it very clear they'd like to remain anonymous. I am now the only one that is not.
Will will it be moved then in the cycle? Does that make sense? Like, will we put it down for,
The next 7 years.
yeah, or,
I believe that the intent of this was to bridge the gap until they are due again.
Yeah, that's
which
not
is
like
gonna be a
7
while.
years.
yeah, I don't know
Those are
how
pretty
anything
dragged out.
makes it 7 years.
And they also made it very clear that they didn't want any of the raised funds from what the basketball team has done with like the golf tournament, anything, those will remain with the golf tournament. They just wanted to make sure that they had replacement uniforms for the ones that were there. So any funds raised for Mr. Smith and his efforts in the basketball team, those remain with them and they can find something else to do with it. I'm the middleman. Is there anything else that we need to touch on with the consent? Will we do that?
Everything else was already presented.
Okay. See, we got anything more about that? This time, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the additions?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the addition.
Second.
First and a second, all in favor? 7-0. All right. Academic reports, whoever would like to go first.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'll draw your attention to the first bullet, which highlights the enrollment at the elementary. We really haven't had any additions since our last meeting. We had one student move from third grade to our virtual, so I added that in to represent the placement, but otherwise our numbers have held where we started. The Booster Club Cookie Dough fundraiser is underway. So that's going on right now, and it's going to support Tiger's Closet as well as Jeff West PE and the elementary as kind of a replacement for what the carnival used to be. The jogathon was supposed to be happening, but there was a cookie dough mix-up, and the lady that runs the cookie dough gave away our slot. So we were going to end up with two fundraisers happening at the same time, which wasn't going to work. So Mr. Axtell and Booster Club talked, and we combined the cookie dough into one thing. And so that's why you see Tiger's Closet, because that was where the jogathon was always a community give back. And then it helped support the PE program, and the cookie dough program or carnival was what helped the elementary. So we just put them all into one, split it up, and that's what's happening right now. Let's see. We also have fire department. I forgot to put that on there for you, but the fire department will be visiting next Tuesday. Pre-K and K will go to the fire. No, I'm sorry. Kindergarten will go to the firehouse. Then the firehouse will go to the preschool, and then they will come to the elementary, have lunch, and visit the kids and talk about fire safety. We also have on Monday, the 14th, crisis training, which was that added date. So we'll be working with our community resource officer, Mr. Haggard, Officer Haggard, for crisis training in the afternoon. We'll have some PD time in the morning. And in the line of PD, about 5 or 6 bullets down there, we've had a number of staff attending various training sessions, myself included, for various things that we're initiating this year in programs. So I've got staff out learning and developing. I'm always happy to have that and have the good support there. And the last, well, not quite last thing, but don't forget, mark your calendars, 2/40, October 31st, we roll down Main Street, working with Officer Boyer and the fire department to make sure we're safe on the street, but we're ready for our Halloween parade. Then lastly, I want to give you an update on preschool. We met as a preschool committee a couple of weeks ago with Amanda Peterson, and she is the early childhood director for Kansas Department of Ed. And she came in and was a good ear to hear questions, concerns, worries, as well as give us feedback for things to think about. I would say we probably got more to think about than we had going in. That's a good thing, because that's what that's all about. Mr. Noonswander and I visited Perry to go see their program and how it's set up. They do not have a kneecap program, but they run a daycare down to 18 months, all the way up to school age. They have their at-risk 3 and 4-year-old. They have a before and after school program, all centered in one building. So it was a nice model to check out. Again, came away probably with more questions than answers, but it was good to see it physically for myself. And it's nice that Lisa Whitehair Carver is on our preschool committee. She is an Ozaki patron, so she is living it in Ozaki as a taxpayer, and she's living it in Perry as the principal. So she's seeing both worlds and been very good to help out. We will be meeting with Kneecap, Mr. Noonswander and I, to go over some Kneecap things, such as we ran into the PE problem and the restroom problem. I hear we have some solutions for that. And then we will also be meeting again with Amanda one more time, well, at least one more time, to kind of start to narrow down on some of those questions, some of those answers. Our application needs to get started in October. And then we have some funding questions, things like that are going to guide us a little further. And my next meeting comes up in 2 weeks. Next week is a bit messy, but in a couple of weeks, we'll have another meeting with our committee and share what we learn on the next couple of meetings with the committee and start making plans for what's next. Probably job descriptions, and get some advertisement going on for our preschool I'm gonna say director for now. I won't know that that's gonna be the actual title, but to get someone in January, February who can start to manage and run some of the ordering and development of the program itself. So with that, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's like they're sneaking in over here. So our September 20th numbers ended at 246, and we did pick up a couple since August. Freshman and sophomore coming in there. We have begun our after-school tutoring homework club here in the library on Mondays through Thursdays from 2:30 to 7. Looking for some ideas to way to increase attendance there. It's a wonderful opportunity, but we aren't getting as many students to take advantage of it yet this year. So we're sometimes when progress reports go out, that changes, which is coming up, but hopefully just to allow them the opportunities to work with someone that can help them and make sure they know that's available. We have finished our initial screeners for reading and math, and then have kids placed in appropriate support classes to help build those skills. We have 4 staff members that been training on Embark, and Embark is, I don't know if Haley, our curriculum director, has shared information with you. It's a way where we're going to tie our curriculum to the state standards and the lessons that teachers are providing, and that will all be documented, and you'll be able to go on to the website and see, oh, this is what they're doing in science, and these are the standards that it covers. And it will be a over the year process. Once staff are trained on it by the 4 that got the initial training, they will work on it throughout the year as they do their lessons. They will put those in there and then tie the standards that they taught. It will be a great tool for us to go back and look at which standards are we hitting a lot, which are we not hitting as much, comparing that to our state assessment scores. Where are we strong? Where are we weak? Okay, we're strong in these standards. How often did we reach those standards? We're weak in these. Did we teach those as much? And so it would be a nice tool for us to reflect and evaluate not just what we're teaching, but how often and what are students grasping and what do they need more of. Tomorrow we host Apply Kansas, which is an opportunity for seniors to apply to colleges, some tech schools, even some job applications. But for many of the colleges, they've dropped their fee, their application fee. And so Mrs. Jensen will host, this is our, how many years of hosting it? At least 5 opportunity, and seniors come down and she helps them and has some volunteers come in to help assist with. So if they have questions as they're filling it out, and you know, this is the first time through for them to do this, and here's what you need to put there, and bring this, and call your mom, find out what your social security number is, because you're going to need that. But it gives them a chance to get that all done, and they can get 2 or 3 that they're really interested in and apply for that day. Make it a fun day. She's got a balloon arch for them and some snacks and some take some pictures at the end of where they applied at, and an opportunity to help them get those things done in their busy lives that sometimes get pushed to the side, and for reduced costs. So it's a nice event. Friday morning, we're going to have building specific crisis training here with Officer Haggard, and he'll go through and just talk to us about some things to think about when you're in this room or that room or any room. Here's some general things to be aware of, and what can we best do to keep our students and ourselves safe. And so we're looking forward to that, and just getting some particulars and having an expert to ask questions to. And then next week we have our parent teacher conferences, and they are at the high school. Come and go. We don't schedule. We'll start getting some information out about this week, reminding, I know it's on the calendars, but just reminding parents and inviting them to come in. We are still in need of a bookkeeper / secretary. So if you have anybody out there, you know, please send them my way. We'd like to get that position filled. We've been fortunate that Claudia has come back, Claudia Wilson, and assisted 1 or 2 days a week with some of the stuff. And then
Matt and I have been covering the others, but it would be nice to have that full-time position filled. And then our special education paras, just keeping a hunt out for someone that may be good in that area. Would like to recognize Mr. Lockhart for assisting us with all the transportation needs. It's really been a smooth transition. And we went through a little ranch in there of adding the Highland Tech program in, and he was able to find a driver for that and has worked with us there. And then I wanted to recognize Callie Dippenwolf, who is one of our newest paras, who's just doing an outstanding job. Heard compliments from many teachers and students, so just wanted to give her a shout out. Questions?
How many kids are going to the Highland Tech College?
We have 6 right now.
Awesome.
It was, they were not able to get in, they were on a waiting list at Washburn, and a couple of them, the last minute, the day they started, they're like, oh, we have room, and they're like, I think we'll stay with Highland, and so it's.
Which campus are they
okay.
going to?
What's that?
Which campus are they going to?
They go to all 3, and so we have a different drop off there in Highland, they have different and pickups, but they get back about 5 minutes later than our Washburn Tech.
Okay, well, that's
So
not
it's
bad.
not terrible.
Have you had feedback from those kids or families? Is it going well? Is that gonna?
I've not heard anything negative.
That-
Usually that means it's going okay. So,
Will Mr. Sapp be here later?
I'm not sure. I know he went to football. I'm not sure, how
Yeah,
that will play out.
he'll be at Fulton
For a while.
Yeah.
No longer. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dooley is not here, so.
She's at volleyball.
Mrs. Mitchell. is up with
I do
Keystone.
have a couple
Okay.
updates from those two though.
All right,
Oh, yeah.
One is Matt is working with Coach Dolslake on the rest. They will be bringing a recommendation on that. And then for middle school English language arts, we do have a candidate. He's local. Teaches in a neighboring district, so won't be able to start until August of next year. But we happy to get a really good candidate. And she'll be looking to, she's already reaching out for some long-term subs for second semester, so.
Who's currently teaching it? Is that Mrs. Wells and Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
well, credit to both of them for
Yes.
stepping up and helping us out.
Yes.
What amazing
What a
substitutes.
wonderful
Yeah.
retirement coming right back.
I know.
It's great to have those that care.
I
Yes.
think Brenna is too afraid to ask him to continue. But
Does she want me to ask?
But the good thing is, we have a really solid candidate with 19 years of experience
Awesome.
that Brenna will be bringing to the board for next year.
It's great news
That is.
that we have.
Okay, just making sure. All right, we're gonna talk about Keystone. First of all, Terry Coughlin, who's the JDLA administrator. Her, Justin Finley, the president of the board, and the executive director met with a building design team a couple of times. And they went over priorities for a proposed building that they want to build in Oskaloosa. They've received a detailed draft of the building and how it would be oriented on the property. We're gonna get into that more because it's an agenda item here in a couple of minutes, so. Also, administrators attended multiple IEP meetings and met with veteran staff and longtime substitutes to provide support and guidance in their classrooms and to discuss staffing and scheduling to ensure that IEP minutes are covered. Administrators also met with the trauma team in preparation for training social workers and school psychologists on September 10. The administrator spent time with students in a pre-K classroom in Jeff West to help the team problem solve strategies to reduce a student's challenging behaviors. Assistant directors and behavior specialists are spending a great deal of time this year supporting students and staff with challenging behaviors. The teams are working hard to make the program adjustments and use positive reinforcement to help students. Also, Keystone administrators met with 75% of our principals and reviewed our principal guidebook. highlighting the role of the principal in IEP meetings and specially designed instruction. I guess they've done this in years past, but it's usually virtual and they don't have a great turnout. They said this year 75% was an excellent turnout, much better than years prior. And then the new paraprofessional training in September, including benefits, de-escalation techniques, dyslexia, and IEP information, was held for 14 new paras. They have some great new team members and they're excited for the contributions to the classroom. They have hired an early childhood teacher to fill a part-time vacancy at Jeff West. We're excited about this new experienced teacher joining the team. And then you have two printouts here. One of them is the classified staffing report and the other one is the certified staffing report. I want you to look at the certified staffing report. The top graph shows certified positions that are filled and certified positions that are vacant. If you look to the right, you can see how many of those are filled with long-term subs and how many of those long-term subs are in an approved program to become certified. So that's what I want to highlight. While those are vacancies and we're filling them with long-term subs at the moment, most of them are in a program to get certified, and Keystone has an agreement with these people if they get tuition reimbursement that for every semester that we help pay for, they serve a semester for Keystone as a certified teacher. So we're hoping that all of those numbers will turn into certified positions here in a year or two. The bottom graph just shows what those numbers would look like when those teachers complete that program, just for reference. And then the classified positions, you can see exactly how many paras each district, each position is currently vacant. Obviously, we are leading the charge right now with 3 vacancies, unfortunately. So if you do know of people, send them over to Keystone. And I know that they are currently working on having a larger social media presence. Keystone is hopefully circulating some more hiring offers and getting their name out there a little bit more. So if you see that, share it. If you know of somebody, send them over.
Kelly, how long does it take for them to complete that program in order to become certified?
I do not know. Do you know?
I think it depends on how far away they are. I mean, typically, one course is 3 credits, and if they need 15 credits or just depends on how far out they are.
Gotcha.
Normally within 2 years.
And then I did ask at our meeting who is responsible for following up with these people to ensure that they are taking the courses they're supposed to be taking. And the directors that oversee that district are looking into that to ensure that they're following through with what they say they are.
I just want to add on here because it's always a topic of discussion. I don't know if everybody understands it, but so they've went from 30 to 36, 6 new hires. This says vacancies of 23.5 or 22 based on this. And that's in the entire Jefferson County interlocal. We are short 3, or is it 5? 2 different.
3.
We're short 3, but so they've been hiring new ones. So we often get the conversation about the lack of para support, and Keystone has raised rates and is working on getting that. That is not something that we have much any control over, but they are working very hard to do that. And we are not the only district. So
Yeah.
Every district in here within that interlocal with Keystone is short paras, but there's a lot of really good effort going on
Yes.
to fill that. And I just don't know that everybody always understands that it's not really something we control.
Yeah.
But
We also post those vacancies on our website. That way, if someone's looking to work at Jeff West, they're not just going and saying, well, I'd have to look at Keystone. Because they may not understand what Keystone is.
Right.
So we post them on our website too. So they know that they would be working here, not somewhere else.
what are these 2?
So the bottom one just shows what those numbers would be if those long-term subs and programs completed their programs.
Oh, gotcha.
Then that many vacancies, it would have the vacancies.
And it would,
So to clarify, those three that are vacant, we are not paying Keystone for, are we?
Actually, we don't. The funding doesn't work that way. Keystone gets their state funding based off staffing. We just pay our percent to get services. So we don't, whether they work here or not, it's not set up that we pay on a per teacher basis.
So we're paying a flat rate.
We just pay, every district pays a flat rate into the service center based off your size of students in the district.
If they're less 14 classified, is the co-op pocketing 14 classified?
No, because if they're short 14, then they don't get funding from the state for 14. They only get funded for people that are actually teaching, and we're funded on a per student basis. They're funded on a per teacher and para basis. So if it's vacant, they don't get funding for it.
thank you, Kelly. Anybody got any questions for Kelly or anything else for Keystone?
We will talk more about it here in a minute.
All right, let's move on to board issues. 5.1, reassignment of board clerk.
So Aaron's been with us since August, and we knew at some point we would make the transition to Aaron being full-time clerk. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say regulations, there's a pretty good sized process that goes into that. Because we have to notify the state, we have to notify the Secretary of State, we have to notify the county, so it takes some time. And we just felt before going into the busy season, now would be a good time to do that. Plus, I don't want to say that Amy's ready to turn over. But they've been working really well together, and Amy will still continue to help support with training. We would like to go ahead and move Aaron to full-time clerk.
Do we do that now or later in the personnel part?
You can do that now, or you can do it during personnel. It's up to you.
Let's just do it now.
Good for
Keep
teaching
coming back.
over
And you get a little relief on the schedule. So,
Yeah. I move that we move, Becca Watson.
No.
Aaron,
No, Aaron, sorry.
different
Wrong,
person.
wrong one. Aaron Watson to, service the board clerk.
Second. No, Aaron's back.
first and a second, any further discussion? All in favor? 7-0.
Welcome.
Hey. One more Aaron.
One more Aaron.
All right, 5.2, bond management project discussion. Mr. Oaks.
All right. Well, in the case of a bond passing, there are several procurement processes, and so I want to explain to you all what those are today. There's really about 4 of them. Anything above $20,000 obviously has to go through a competitive process. There's different levels of that, and so I just want to educate you all on what those are in the event the bond passes. So let me know if you guys, I need to move the board. I'm really gonna split this into.
I don't know if you want to kind of swing just a little bit, so we're not looking over these two, but yeah, the audience can still see.
Sounds good.
There you
And better? All right, so the reason that you would entertain multiple different procurement processes is to really stretch the dollar as far as we can. Some of them have pros and cons, obviously, but trying to figure out as we divvy these projects up, how do we handle them in the most competitive fashion and the fashion that delivers the best product for the school. So the first one that I'll talk to is
the school. Is the school, I'm gonna change colors here. Thanks for everybody. For those that are teachers, you'll have to forgive my handwriting. Is the school bids. Now, what this is a school can send out an RFP themselves. And they can hire that for what I would say very simple projects. So it's called delegated design. So the design is actually delegated to the subcontractors bidding on the work. This is very beneficial because we skip over the step of hiring a general contractor. So you save a lot of dollars by doing this. You also save by not hiring, by not hiring an architect as well. The limitations to this is that it has to be very simple. Some great examples of that are, say, sidewalks, fencing, exterior painting, but it requires minimal coordination, minimal oversight, but a great way to stretch the dollar. The next procurement process is the one that probably most of you are familiar with. It's called design, bid, and build. You'll notice I'll jump from lowercase to uppercase. It's something I learned at K-State in architectural class. And I haven't corrected it since, but anyway, so design, bid, build. How that works is the school, through a competitive process, will hire an architect. That architect will do the design, and it could take up to several months. Usually, I would say design takes as long as the construction project, if not longer. So then they finish at 100% construction documents. Then they will send that out to bid. And then there'll be several general contractors bid on it. Okay, and then the build will start. The benefit to this is you get two competitive processes, obviously, but the general contractor, having them compete against each other, will really start to lower a general contractor's cost. So I would say this is where the school benefits more, not quite as direct bid, but they do still save dollars by doing this process. This needs to happen with, I would say, a little more complicated projects. More complicated and requires more management. The con with this is this bid day right here. What happens is when an architect sends out a bid and you have multiple general contractors bidding on it, they are collecting all the bids they can within the hour before bid time. So they are getting 10 mechanical numbers, 10 electrical numbers, 10, however many numbers across all the trades, and they have less than an hour to throw those all together and try to be low on bid day. That is a formula for change orders, but for certain projects, it makes a whole lot of sense. So the cons can be change orders. And also, you're trusting one set of eyes to hit your budget. So you are only relying on the architect to hit your budget. Now, it's more complex than this, but I will say for projects that require multiple trades, the classroom additions is what comes to mind. There's not a lot of flexibility in classrooms, right? They're of a certain size, they require certain elements,
casework, et cetera, hallways leading into them. Obviously your skin wrapping around it, your foundations. So not very complicated, and usually an architect is going to hit their design on budget when it comes to classrooms. Now, something that is more complicated and complex, that's where an architect can really get in trouble. And on bid day, those GCs could all come in over budget, which has led to the next process. And I'm going to call this design build. But how it works is essentially at the same time an architect is hired, a construction manager at risk is hired. So essentially a GC, but in this format, they're called a construction manager at risk. They work together to get through 100% construction documents. And what they'll do is the architect will provide intermittent levels of check-ins with the construction manager at risk to provide budgets throughout the design phase. When they provide budgets throughout the design phase, that ensures that they're going to hit on bid day. So let's just say bid day. Now, essentially, you've already hired your construction manager and they're bidding out to the subcontractors. They also bid out to the subcontractors here, but you're relying on each GC to go find their own subcontractors, and then your build starts. Now, the benefit to this is obviously having two eyes on your design as it goes through months and months. So you're relying on the construction manager who knows where the market's at, who can tell the architect when their design's going over budget or not. The con with this is you really have given all your competitive process based off of an RFQ. So this is a request for qualifications. That's how that person is hired. So essentially they'll submit their fee that they're going to charge on the job, their insurances, why they're qualified, their history, their project team, but you don't know that in price. They will just take those fees that they submit and put it on top of whatever the subs come in on bid day. So you hire them on strictly qualifications. What happens is this is a great project that are a great procurement process that really takes care of all your worries when it comes to a very complicated project. The unfortunate part of this is you pay for it. These construction managers will staff these jobs appropriately to eliminate change orders, so you'll have minimal change orders in this process. But you're going to be paying for a larger staff to hit those change orders than you would if you put a bunch of general contractors against each other. I would say for your bang for your buck, you're going to get the least out of this, but you are going to have your most guarantee of hitting your budget. Let's see. So that's actually probably more of a con. The fourth procurement process is called cooperative purchasing. So cooperative purchasing, so there's cooperative agencies out there who have already done a competitive process. There is no project, but they've done a competitive process. What they've done is asked multiple subcontractors, material suppliers, et cetera, give me your unit prices. So they've submitted unit prices in a hard bid competitive scenario. So they have those unit prices posted that any school district can go in or municipality and use those unit prices to procure materials. Greenbush is a common one that you're probably familiar with. So purchasing material, furniture, school buses, et cetera. This is also a great dollar saving method because one, you don't need an architect or construction manager, so it has to be very simple. Some great projects for this, I would say, are your FF&E, so your furniture, fixtures, and equipment. What that is if you were to take a building and turn it upside down, everything that falls out would be considered furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So one thing that you don't want to be short-sighted on as a construction project is just thinking what the cost of construction is. Just like your house, you still have to furnish those rooms. You still have to furnish bedrooms. You still have to furnish classrooms, kitchens, etc. So with this, I would say you're gonna get your most bang for your buck buying your furniture, fixtures, and equipment through cooperative purchasing. I would say this is just a more complex project. The CMAR route, the design build route. To give you examples of how schools have used this is Perry, they're building a new gym and softball and baseball fields. They did it all this way. So they hired an architect and a construction manager, and they said, here's our bond, here's our dollars. You all take care of it. We trust you. So they will hit their budget. They'll definitely pay for it. And there's somewhat limited visibility into that because you're relying on a construction manager to present to you a guaranteed maximum price. You will have to ask further details to find out who actually bid or gave those numbers in that guaranteed maximum price, how much staff they have in that guaranteed maximum price. You know their fee, but you'll have to focus in on that staff. So Perry did this. Go ahead and change colors. This is Perry. Silver Lake did a combination of all of them, and they did that to stretch the dollars. So Silver Lake did some directly. They did some via design bid build. They did hire a construction manager and architect for their larger additions, and then they purchased their FF&E through cooperative purchasing. So as you can see, they really spread it across all 4 different procurement processes because they were able to make and stretch their dollar more by doing these different processes. So right process for the right kind of project is what I say. Right tool for the right kind of project. So in the event the bond passes, we would need to go through the needs list and identify which one of these processes best applies to that particular need. So I would say if a bond executive committee was put together, they would then have to look at what is the best procurement process to address these particular needs. Now, keep in mind, we will still need to hire an architect to come in and do an investigation into the facility. So we are going to need at least one of these 2 processes so they can come in and do further investigation on their own. Trying to think what else. Atchison, they're building a new softball, baseball field. Atchison did it all the design build route. Valley Falls did gym improvements. I believe they did this route where they hired an architect and then had them bid it out. Hayes has done a combination of all these. There are some companies out there that do have design build all in one house. Other Manhattan High School or Manhattan School District, excuse me, asked that companies pair together for design build. So you can do an RFQ process to hire an architect. You can do an RFQ process to hire a construction manager at risk, or you can do an RFQ process that kind of combines them together, where these 2 will go find partners and submit on it together. So, any questions on that?
So, for example, with Silver Lake, since they did a variety, who oversees to ensure that each of those areas are being completed, et cetera?
It's a good question. There is the bond campaign, or the executive bond committee. So in the event that a bond passes, a bond committee will oversee how this work is split up. There are construction owner representatives out there that usually charge a couple % to oversee the entirety of the bond, and they will help you navigate these different processes. But there is a premium that comes with that. And I usually see those with larger schools and larger projects more than what this particular bond is.
So to add to that, Nemaha Central hired a group like that. And looking at this bond, it would be about $250,000 to $300,000 that we would pay them. And they worked between everybody on there and the board. So they're really on behalf of the board. and they manage that. That's one option. The other option is, since the November meeting is the Monday before the election, in the event it were to pass, then the board could call a special meeting like that next Monday and designate your own executive committee to do that. So you have two options. Hire a company to work on your behalf to oversee everything, and like probably said, 1 or 2% of the bond they would take off the top. Or if you decided to create your own executive committee, I would suggest like one board member, myself, people in the community that understand construction, you know, and have about a 6-member committee. So those are really the two options that you would have to answer your question, Aaron, to provide oversight, because the board won't have, I mean, you still have to be a board. You need someone working on your behalf in between board meetings.
If we outsource it like what Newhouse Central did or something like that, who has final say of decision making? Would they then bring like things for approval and like the board is still?
Yeah, in all these processes, it would all get brought to the board for approval.
It's just the work in between meetings that you can either create your own team to do that, or there are companies out there that will do that. But it's probably $250,000, $300,000 of the project.
So, owner's rep will charge you 1 to 2%. An architect will charge you 7 to 9%, and a general contractor construction manager will charge around 3 to 4%. So as you can see, the more that the school can handle directly, that's quite a bit of fee that they save by not going through that. Now, there are things that you need. You have to have a design for certain things, so we have to do that. There is a benefit to having a construction manager hired for certain projects to help that architect hit the budget, right? You are going to pay more for that. So I typically see owners' representatives, you know, in that 30+ range. So, you know, large schools, Latham, Manhattan had one. Emporia did not. They had an $80 million bond, and they did not have a bond rep. Derby did not have a bond rep. Theirs was over 100 million. But yeah, I typically see Manhattan High. They actually hired a staff permanently. So did Salina to come on and be their representative. But I would say below 30 million is usually where a bond executive committee can handle.
How can we? I'm sure there's a plan in place here because we don't have a ton of time, but like, how can we educate ourselves a little bit more about like all of that to make an educated decision on the route to go? Like in the meantime, while we have a little time to gather information and wrap our brain around it, because I'm gonna guess none of us have done this before, and to make an educated decision like that. Is there a plan for presenting like that? I'm just trying to understand our timeline because we're inside a month.
Yeah.
And if we have to make some of these decisions right after a vote, if it would pass,
I would
I'd like to
recommend,
be able to get every one of us as much information on what the educated decision would be.
How much time do we have? I mean, it's a lot. And I won't be rushed on a lot of these decisions. So.
I don't wanna make
I'm really
them
right now, if it passes, I can, whatever. I haven't, you know, really thought about it, but. You know,
There
within a
should
week,
be,
I'm not making big decisions.
So that's what I was getting at, since it's October 7th. So in this, from today until we are needing to make that decision, how can we better educate ourselves in understanding like what what conversations we need to have to come to that decision.
Yeah, there should be no rush. You all have plenty of time. And we are going to, or the school district needs to take their time when they go through and submit RFQs and RFPs out there and do it in a proper way. So you will need to take some time. And what I would suggest is you start thinking about who you would want on this bond executive committee to help navigate this process. So those are conversations you should be having. And then also reviewing the needs list, trying to identify yourselves which of the 4 buckets these fit in. So that would be the homework that I would tell you to do. To Matt's question on time, classroom additions, right? I think those are something that's very simple. You all meet shortly after a successful bond vote. Then you talk about how we get an RFP out for classroom additions. Doesn't have to happen the next day or very fast. We have 3 years to accomplish this, so we've got plenty of time. We'll talk about what architects and that we would like to go hire for that. Then we'll send out the RFP, get the architects to respond. They will then take months to design those classrooms. Then they'll send it back, bid it out. Then there's another competitive process that happens where it goes out to GC. So you will have time. There are going to be some things that are very simple that you can knock off. Playgrounds, sidewalks, paint, fencing, those kind of things. So there's no rush to doing those first either. What I would suggest is there's a lengthy renovation of our schools that will take a lot of time to investigate. If you look at and create a guiding principles, which I've talked about earlier, addressing those that are at the top of that list first is what I would suggest. So building, really fixing the buildings is probably number 1. Number 2 is the classrooms. Then the classroom, then any other elements that may be on that needs list, but prioritizing how you want to address these so you are hitting the most important items first as you go through this. So those that are of least of priority, you're tackling at the very end.
Can we do like the deferred maintenance, the stuff that fixing roofs and stuff like that, right away? Say we add on classrooms at the elementary school, start into that project, get that going, see where we're gonna be before we bite into the next one? Or do we need to just have that all in mind?
No, you do need to tackle it just as like you said. You need to tackle your top priorities first, but what you'll do is the bond executive committee will want to put together a list of all the projects, and then they're going to want to track the cost of those projects as it goes through the certain design stages and then when it's eventually bid out. Because some are going to come in over, some are going to come in under. So you'll have to know, okay, now I have this much dollars to spend on the next one, or I don't have that much dollars to spend on the next one. So listing out all the projects, tracking them through the procurement and the design and procurement process, and always having a total project cost being constantly monitored at all times is something that needs to happen. There's several documents out there to help that bond executive committee do that.
So it sounds like we should be thinking about some individuals and having conversations if they're willing, and having that conversation amongst the group, and to see if we could form said committee of people we as a group decide would be best for that, but they also probably need a little heads up and not assume that they want to do it. And so be thinking about that, and then thinking about the questions we have to know more about where we're going. But am I right in believing that the only thing on the table right now is a taxpayer vote? We really have no decisions to make anymore until we know if we're making them or not. I mean, there has not been a bid of any kind, and there's no one put in place, so just need to let taxpayers make the decision. That's what we did, is put it on them, and then we cross that bridge. But this is helpful. Now we know where we can focus some of our energy in the meantime.
Can you clarify, is for anything over $20,000, no matter which method we use, has to go out for bid? Anything over 20,000, no matter what?
Correct. Now, there's competitive process. So,
Okay.
majority of things always do end up in a bid, but when you go to hire an architect, they're not really bidding on the job. They're providing you a fee, and their fee goes on wherever the cost ends up at. So you're hiring them off of qualifications and a fee. That would be the same for an architect and a construction manager at risk, is you're hiring them based off of qualifications and a fee. As you get down through the process, then it does go out to bid,
Okay,
and then you'll see a bid process.
on each
for-
one.
on
But they'll get paid on final cost.
Correct.
So
Correct. So the more you
they
have-
ask for a pay, I mean, we.
Got it.
So an architect is similar to the board attorney. You don't have to bid for a board attorney because they're providing a service. An architect's the same way. They're gonna provide you a service. And then you will interview a couple, 2 or 3, and pick the one you like. And based off what fees, what work they've done in the past, but you don't bid the architect. They will just add a fee to everything that they do, but some of the things, like in section 1, we don't need an architect to do certain things, so we can save that fee if it's smaller, simple, paint, sidewalks, things like that.
I think I asked this last time, on that number 3, design build. The architect and construction manager, those will be 2 different companies for checks and balance.
Yes, they usually are. There's some out there that do it both, but most of them are separate.
We haven't bid a single project yet.
Yeah, and we probably won't for some time. First, we're gonna have to figure out where the projects fit in these buckets. Then you're gonna have to get these people hired, and then through months of design, then you end up at the bidding process. So takes a while. Manhattan school districts hired several architects. They hired some architects to do classroom additions, some to do their maintenance building, some to do their district office, some to do their gym addition. So they had, I think, several different architects. So they really kind of spread the wealth throughout their community.
Is that based on like their specialty or what their strengths are?
Exactly. Yeah,
Versus-
some are very good at classroom additions. Some are great at building a pre-engineered warehouse. So, yep, you got it. I will say probably the most difficult part of this is going to be the renovations. That's just going to be a long investigative process. The facilities assessment did dive into all that, but there is a deeper process where we actually start coring floor samples, where we start doing asbestos testing, where we start doing lead paint testing. All that costs money. And so once the bond, or if pending a successful bond vote, those will be some things of an environmental study that the school will want to go conduct right away to see where all the asbestos is at in their facilities, and do we really want to touch the tile? Because if we tear it up, we're now disturbing asbestos. If we leave the tile, we can just cover it right up. Asbestos works as if you disturb it.
Is that fee based as well?
That will be an RFP process. So if you wanted to go out for an environmental survey, you would send out a bid. There is a possibility that it will be less than $20,000. They're not very expensive. So that could be something that if you wanted to hire someone directly, but I would usually recommend still getting several bids on that.
And that's what we will do?
That's what the bond executive committee will do. They will facilitate the process. They will come to you and explain how their process went. Here's the result of that process. Here's our recommendation for approval.
I had to do that for sidewalks. Because it was a long year back. I couldn't do that. They're for real.
I think the biggest point, some of our questions from what I'm gathering, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we've got a lot of educating to do about the process in the lead up, whether it passes or not. We can't just like sit tight, and do nothing. We need to like prepare so that we're ready for it, and not one thing on there has happened yet, so.
We just wanted to make sure, have a little bit of time in October, just give you a heads up of what options you would need to be considering in the event of.
So our homework until election day is to study up on this, wrap our brain around it as much as we can, and think about who we would want on a bond executive committee, pending the passing of the bonds.
Correct.
And until it passes, there's really nothing, no steps we're gonna be taking. We just need to be ready if and when it does.
You got it?
Okay.
This was great. Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, one thing that I just thought of is delegated design is a unique thing where the design is delegated to the bidding subcontractors and you don't need a design firm. We have a lot of foundation issues, foundational settlement. An architect is going to go hire a foundation consultant. We can go do that directly. We don't have to go through an architect to do that. And those foundation specialists will come in, they'll give their own analysis of the foundation settling and provide recommendations for those repairs and the cost of those repairs. So I would say foundation settling would be another one. Foundation repair would be another one. So sorry, I just thought. But that gives you an idea as you think through the list. What can we delegate designs to? What can we purchase directly? What do we need a design for?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Robert.
Thanks, Charlie.
So. Not that he doesn't want to go watch the Chiefs or Royals to take a pick. But we did have to reach out early for this, for a bond advisor. The bond advisors don't charge anything unless the bond were to pass. But Clayton from Piper Jaffray, I know there's questions about, well, if the bond or selling bonds, or I don't know if Clayton's planning on sitting here for another hour and a half. But if there were questions that you might have, I don't know if you're thinking about staying here all evening. But anyway.
Run while you
I
can.
mean, I can just give a brief, like 2-minute overview
That'd be
of kind of
great.
what you're expecting. So essentially, Clayton Kelly with Piper Sandler. So we help with bond issues for schools in Kansas. And well, there's a lot of questions around timing of when you receive funds, if a bond is successful. So from a financing side of things, typically what we're seeing right now in the current interest rate environment that we're seeing, typically all bonds that are authorized through an election. So in your case, the $21 million, that would be all issued at one time. So you'd have all those funds available at one time, and then you can actually earn interest earnings on that immediately. So not only are you, yes, accumulating debt service, but you'd also be accumulating interest earnings that you can use on other projects that fit within the scope of the bond election or to help pay off the bonds early. So that's kind of the process for it from a timing perspective. You're probably going to be able to have funds within 3 months after that election date. So that $21 million, you'd essentially have an interest rate locked within 3 months after the election date. And so that when we started talking about the taxpayer costs, the potential impact, that's all based on an initial issuance over 25 years, what we would expect in the current interest rate environment.
When, say we get the project done and we're under, do people typically hold that money and allow to your interest a while and then pay it back? Or do we, when we're done, just?
Yeah, totally up to you. So essentially you typically have an option with the bond issue after 5 to 7 years to start prepaying it off at no penalty. I think it's going to come down to what your borrowing costs. So what are you paying on the bond versus what are you earning by holding it on interest, let's say over the last 12 to 18 months. A lot of districts have been able to earn more in their bond and interest fund by letting that money sit there compared to what they're currently paying on their outstanding debt. So you do have the option, I would say, to pay it off early. Another big thing about a bond issue that I always like, it goes kind of similar to your point, is not only if you have extra funds, what do you do with it? But what happens if interest rates drop? You know, we just locked in after 3 months at 4.5%. Now interest rates dropped to 2%. You have the ability to refinance that at a lower rate moving forward. So there's always a question about future interest rate risk, changes in interest rate. How are we timing that? I don't ever want to try to predict the interest rate environment, but having that optionality, I think, is huge.
Is there a penalty to refinance?
There's no penalty. It's free. So after 5 to 7 years, you can refinance at no penalty.
So just going back to your timeline, like the timing. So if it would pass. With interest rates right now and the money you can earn on that money, and with the delay of a lot of these projects. I mean, that can generate substantial money on top of that.
Yeah, significant.
And we did pay a bond off. The 1994 bond was paid off in 19, I believe, 18. Because we tackled everything on there and at the time felt pretty good about it. Hadn't had a facilities assessment done. But I was good faith, didn't have anything on the list of to-dos and gave everybody a break on that. But I'm just thinking,
Yeah,
$21 million bond with a lot of that sitting unused for a while with current ability to generate interest on it. I mean, that's substantial money.
yeah. I mean, we've seen upwards of 10% of the potential bond issue, additional funds just from interest earnings in this current environment. So it all depends on that construction timeline.
Mhm.
But just recently, in the interest rate environment's been pretty wild from that perspective. But from an authorization standpoint on the board, so essentially within that 3-month period, I'll probably see you twice during that. The first one would essentially, there's a sale resolution that you would have to authorize for us to be able to move forward with the process to lock in that final interest rate. And then the second one is we come back after we essentially bid out the bond issue to several different banks to secure that final interest rate. We'll come back after that's bid to provide you with what that final interest rate is.
Anybody have more questions? I appreciate you being here. That was,
Thank you.
hadn't thought about that part. Didn't even know we could do that. That's learning every day.
That's huge.
That is,
10%.
especially looking back at the timeline of the major construction items. I mean, you maximize pretty good chunk of opportunity with there to generate money. Given the interest rates right now.
To add to that, and when you actually need to spend these dollars, you're gonna be spending design dollars first. Construction dollars will not come for some time, and so when you actually will need to be paying on construction dollars, it's gonna be spread out over 2 to 3 years. So you will have those funds available sitting there accruing interest or whatever until you need to spend them. So it'll be a long process before you get to spend all the bonds.
And that could help bridge the gap of some of those unknowns when we get in. That's. We got anything else? That way we can at least give the option to leave if they would like.
I have nothing else. It's brand new to all of us, I think, pretty much, and so we appreciate any information we can get.
Thank you for coming, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on. Keystone lease agreement update. Before we go, do we wanna see if Brenna had anything now that she's here for her building report? I just want to give you the opportunity, not, you don't have to.
Our eighth grade volleyball girls are still undefeated.
Yay.
Knoxville was the only other undefeated team in our league tonight, so it was a very intense game, but we.
They won, yay. Good for them.
That was it, actually. We had any questions about what was on there? Good night, volleyball.
Good.
Alright, thank you. Alright, Keystone lease agreement update.
So obviously, there's a lot, will happen between now and June 30th. We'll talk a little bit about Keystone's JDLA facility, but I met with Doug Anderson, and this is just from the lens of if they continue to keep their executive offices at the Ozaki building, which we go back to May, June, we did write them a letter, the Keystone board indicating that this board, you know, we would use the classrooms for early childhood center and they could keep Keystone offices. They're at Ozaki for an indefinite 5, 8, whatever, many years. So they didn't have to look at building. So I met with Doug. They currently pay us $1,200 a month for the full facility. They would be, if you look just at space, they would be looking at being in 25% of the Ozaki facility. We would take over 75% for early childhood center. They would continue to pay the $1,200 a month. They would also continue, and again, this is just Doug and I talking back and forth. There'll be a lot more needs to go into it. They currently hire the custodian and pay benefits. They would offer to continue hiring the custodian. And even though they're in 25%, the custodian would still maintain 100% of the facility. We obviously would be taking over all utilities. We would pay utilities monthly because it is our facility, but then we would bill them each month. They would reimburse us for 25% of the utilities. And then last year and prior, there was a discussion that if they were to vacate permanently, there would be some fee that we would pay to overtake all of things that they've done as far as capital, that we would pay them for things that maybe still had 5 years left on it. And I think that dollar amount was around 70,000. Someone might have been 80. But anyway, that they would just not worry about that since they're still co-tenants with us. So that's just initial. We don't have anything really written down other than we're just trying to think through what a new lease agreement might look like in the event that we were co-tenants. So
This is the most headway on that lease in 3 years. I mean, sadly,
Longer than that.
well, yeah. But, if they keep the custodian, I mean, they've kept that place beautiful.
Yeah.
That's big.
and he works well right now with Tim Roberts. So they've got a good relationship. But I just thought, you know, if they were to leave, everything is on us. Custodian, utilities. I mean, it's our facility, so I thought it was a good start for being co-tenants. I also like the idea early on with starting an early childhood center, having extra adults over there every day that are licensed, just for Now, Wes and I would be going over there a lot, but just on a daily, having an extra 10 adults in that building, just makes me feel a little more secure with all those kids.
Now, this was about what our insurance was. If we add more and take that over and put more students in there, would that raise that insurance on them?
We will be, I've reached out to, we're in that paper or whatever, PERP, Kansas,
Mhm.
that pool. They're gonna come out, do an assessment of it, look at it. We already insure the building because it's under our name. Keystone also has to have certain insurance for liability and stuff, so we'll be getting a new quote on what that would look
But they'll be
like.
taking that with them.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll have additional liability because we'll be operating.
but they will, even though they'll have to take insurance to their new facility, they still have insurance for, work comp things because to cover their employees while they're there. But we'll be getting updated quotes on insurance, but we were just trying to get something part of a conversation. They will have some savings because they're not paying full utilities. But there's some savings for us, well, not savings because we're investing. But as Wes said, when we start with students in there, we will also get to count those students. So we will generate additional funding. So I'm starting to work on how much revenue will be generated, what are our new anticipated costs, how many teachers, paras, all of that stuff. But this is just an initial co-tenant.
Well, I like them wiping this slate clean because how long did we spend trying to figure out whose was what?
Wow,
Yeah.
it was a while.
Never get there. The point is we've always had the intent to like try to accommodate, but if we found a need, I mean. But you just made a comment, like this is the most progress on this conversation and. It's been years, so. Really appreciate the openness and the ones that are working on that and the messaging being delivered much. Much clearer
Yeah, it's all good stuff.
and reflecting the actual intent of the board.
Yes.
Would you agree you're there more?
Oh, yeah, it's, yeah. It's much better.
All right, so future conversations about that coming.
Did you want to talk about their facility too, or?
Let's think the next item.
5.4.
Oh, I missed that. Got it. Sorry.
Keystone JDLA facility update.
So you do have a copy of. This is the new facility that they're proposing over in Oskaloosa. What's blue is up for continued conversation. And that is when our board made the offer for their offices, administrative offices to stay in Ozaki for an indefinite amount of time. They were just looking at a facility to house JDLA students. They're still working on renderings. They're still, the cost is still unknown. We hope to have better figures by next week with the Keystone board meeting. But even at that point, we were looking at our share around $250,000 because every district's going to have to kick in to build this thing. So, and initial conversations is that would have to come out of capital outlay, but we could spread it out over a couple years. And all the districts are paying their percent 250,000 sounds like a lot, it is. But the 90,000 to Valley Falls is a lot to them because they have fewer students and their budget's smaller, so. There's also some in the cooperative that would just want their administrative offices completely out of Ozaki, and they just want everything in one spot. They all have different reasons, maybe bad memories from, but, so adding blue offices and repurposing the yellow offices significantly drives the building project up. I don't have the numbers on that, but other board members and other superintendents said, then give us the numbers for Keystone to be all in one place. I just wanted you to get an idea of what it is that they're looking at over there. Without the blue and yellow, it's around 1.6 million. They've asked for additional upgrades, so all of a sudden it's to 2.4, 2.5 million. Now you add these, so they're looking around $3 to $3.2 million, and we would have to pay our share of it. So again, we made the offer that to help kind of phase this in, if you're 12 miles away with your administrative offices, you could tackle a little bit as you go along instead of doing it all at once. So I think what the board is going to have to consider is, do they want to tackle it all at once or do they want to phase into it? So we don't have numbers other than just kind of some estimates. I don't have an estimate on what that would cost us, but if 1.6 million and our share is around 250,000, you get north of 3 million. You might as well just double what our share is. And that's what all the board members on the Keystone are going to be addressing a week from Wednesday at their next meeting. So I just wanted to share this with you, let you know the conversations. And like we've had discussions here, they won't have this finished by August. So there's still conversations of what then, where do those JDLA students go in August of next year? Do they all go back to their residing districts? I know Doug's talking with some churches that maybe for a semester, but that's still conversations to be had. But you can imagine they haven't even broke ground, so this most likely won't be built and ready to be occupied by August. So
What's the yellow you mentioned?
so that is currently for JDLA students. But if they moved administrative offices over there as well, then the yellow could then be like technology. We'll learn more on Wednesday. I just know the blue are all the new administrative. They also talked about a FEMA room, which the very middle section of that, again, we know FEMA grants aren't always there, but if you build it without a grant, it's just going to drive up the cost because that would be storm shelter area. So I just wanted to get you at least a rendering and an initial where they're at. But I don't want to say they're a long ways away, but they're not close enough to where even if they were ready to make a decision next week, that it would be ready by August. I didn't know if there were any other questions.
Any questions about this at the moment? All right,
I will just quickly add, I was told by Doug today that minimum completion is gonna be December. So that means that our JDLA kids, everybody's JDLA kids, they're gonna have to find a home for them for a full semester. And Keystone is going to do that. They're going to find a spot for all of them together to keep them together. Sending them back to their districts and their buildings is a last resort. So we're not there yet.
well, we're still talking about it because we didn't want to ever do that.
Yeah. Yep, they're committed to finding a spot.
All right, 5.5. Resolution number 2024-3.
They haven't filled out.
Oh, that one's filled out.
So a little background on this. And Matt actually brought it to me today. Jefferson County Emergency Management. Keith Jeffries or Jeffers. We have, every county has a list of emergency management by district, by city, projects that could be done. By passing this resolution, that allows us to be eligible in the event that FEMA puts out some additional grants. For Jeff West, it would include secured entrances, the film that goes over glasses, storm shelters. I mean, there's several things that we've already have on the approval list. We just need to update our resolution. The challenge is with all the hurricanes, everything going on nationwide, FEMA money is going to be most likely more scarce, but they still have to give out some or amounts to each state. And by passing this resolution, all it means is that we accept that if grant money were to come to Kansas, we would be ready to make application in the event that we had a need in our school district. And this resolution just says we're on board. We want to be at the table in the event that we receive as a state and as a county FEMA grant money. So that's, I don't know if Matt, you had anything to add to that?
So, and I've learned it from the city. We're in what they call Region K, and we have a couple projects that we're trying to get done. And I had got an email today saying that it has accepted Region K. So what'll happen is, we'll be talking about tomorrow night, the city's gonna do the same thing. We'll enter into a resolution. We sat down a couple months ago, Dana and I, and went through and updated ours. What happened to flip through, the school was on there. So now that Region K has been open to this funding, what will happen is once we make this resolution, it allows us to apply. So I don't know if it's isolated to Region K, that there's a leftover surplus. Anytime we have a storm or anything, we gotta take notes and keep it, because then we'll get emailed to say, hey, did you get this? You hit so much amount, it'll be reimbursed. So I think that this region, I'm not sure, but I think there's money there. What this is gonna allow us to do is apply for it. That's all it is. So this allows us to turn to the application process. I'll know more tomorrow or whenever the city meeting's over, because I'll get with him right away.
So we need a motion to adopt or to the resolution. Man, who loves reading? It's a whole
You have to
page.
do the whole thing?
I make a motion to adopt resolution 2024-3, adopting the Kansas Homeland Security Region K Hazard Mitigation Plan. Whereas the USD 340 recognizes the threat and natural hazards posed to people and property within our community, and whereas undertaking hazard mitigation actions will reduce the potential for harm to people and property from future hazard occurrences, and whereas the U.S. Congress passed the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, emphasizing the need for pre-disaster mitigation of potential hazards, whereas the Disaster Mitigation Act made available hazard mitigation grants to state and local governments, and whereas an adopted hazard mitigation plan is required as a condition of future funding for mitigation projects under the multiple federal emergency management agency, also known as FEMA, pre and post disaster mitigation grant programs, and whereas the USD 340 fully participated in the FEMA prescribed mitigation planning process to prepare this multi-hazard mitigation plan, and whereas the Kansas Division of Emergency Management and FEMA Region B11, is that 7? Officials have reviewed the Kansas Homeland Security Region K Hazard Mitigation Plan and approved it contingent upon this official adoption of the participating governing body, and whereas the USD 340 desires to comply with the requirements of the Disaster Mitigation Act and to augment its emergency planning efforts by formally adopting the Kansas Homeland Security Region K Hazard Mitigation Plan, and whereas adoption by the governing body for the USD 340 demonstrates the jurisdiction's commitment to fulfilling the mitigation goals and objectives outlined in this plan, and whereas adoption of this legitimizes the plan and authorizes responsible agencies to carry out the responsibilities under the plan. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the USD 340 adopts Kansas Homeland Security Region K Hazard Mitigation Plan as an official plan, and be it further resolved that USD 340 will submit this adoption resolution to the Kansas Division of Emergency Management and FEMA Region 7 officials to enable the plan's final approval.
Second.
You got the easy. First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor? 7-0.
You want to sign it? Oh, you missed. No, I'm just kidding.
Was it third?
Yeah. You can repeat. You can repeat.
I can pass it down the table if you like. Sign.
You read too much. I know your eyes were.
I'll fill out a new one and do one. All right. No student issues. Facilities, equipment, and planning, disposal of items from the high school. You guys look at that.
Yes.
I make the motion to dispose the items from the high school as presented.
Second.
First and second, all in favor? 7-0. Second. Sorry. Okay, personnel items. How long you thinking, Brad? Doesn't look like tons, but.
How many? Five. I can do that one.
But give us a minute to go into that other room.
Mr. President, I move to go into enter into executive session for KS 75-4319 for a period of 5 minutes at 8:10 p.m. to discuss personal issues not elected personnel under KOMA exception to include Dr. Newswander and admin as presented, with the meeting to resume into the boardroom at 8:15.
Second.
First and second, all in favor? 7-0. Okay, we're back in open session.
I make a motion to, accept the resignations and contract for hire as the minute.
Second.
First and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Gave you 2 seconds, 7-0. And we're down to superintendent report.
So I will try to go through this fairly quickly. Donna and I have 2 school districts already on our calendar to go that have consolidated pitches. Perry is next week, Walmego in a couple weeks. Sabetha, I'll be checking with them, and we'll, if we need more, Paola. But we're looking for districts that have similar size where they cook in one and then go to the others. Our goal is to be able to have, by next August, we could run a consolidated kitchen, at least start working that way. We've already spent 30,000 this year, just trying to keep freezers up and running. Having everything at the high school, everything at the middle school, everything at the elementary, so how we could be more efficient. So we've got some tours upcoming on that, and we'll keep you posted. September 20th, that's the big count date, how we're funded. We're guaranteed what we had last year. Preliminarily, we're about even, if not up just a little. We've turned away probably at least 10 students, just because of maxed out class sizes. But
Maxed out in elementary, yeah.
yeah, so in June, you know, we have to, for out of district students, we have to look at what classes can we accept out of district, knowing that we have to take anyone that moves in district. In August, we had a family of 4 that applied. 2 of their kids were in classes that we had 0. We just maxed out enrollment size. We just had another one, same thing. It seems like we always get the ones in the same classes. But anyway, overall, we're about even. Our free lunch is down. I think mostly that was changes in the federal where they cut off. We had quite a few families go from reduced to paid. Some go from free to reduced. And even though they may not have changed a lot, the guidelines did. Each free lunch student generates about $2,600 for our at-risk program. So that's doesn't affect this year. But if you remember, I cushioned the budget in the event we had numbers go up, and I stuck that in one line. So it's not budgeted, so I just wiped that out. But our budget hasn't changed this year. It's just next year, unless it goes up, we will be at the same number of students, and we'll be relying on the Bay State aid going up. So
we added tuition back,
yes,
and then we have parents that were on reduced lunch or free lunch now having to pay for student lunch.
yes.
Because their income went up.
And we thought
That's why.
with adding fees back, more people would go ahead and fill it out. And that was not the case.
Oh, so they still have the opportunity.
Yeah, they still, and if anything happens any day throughout the year, if something changes in household income, you can always fill it out. So it can change throughout the year, so we can add more. It's just on September 20th, that's when they take the snapshot. And that's now it's still to be audited, but free and reduced can go up and down all year. It's just of that date. That's what our budget next year is based off of.
So everyone still has the opportunity to apply.
Yeah, I thought it was When you signed up, that's what it was.
No, yeah.
And we don't create those guidelines.
And even the ones that, once the guidelines came out and it changed, whatever it was as of September 20th, we will not go back and say, well, you went from free to, we're gonna go back, we're not gonna go back and recharge someone. It's what it was at the time. That if they were free at that time, they didn't pay tuition, and we're not gonna go back retroactive and change that. It was just the past couple weeks, when the federal guidelines came out, it moved some people. But just a reminder, Wednesday night, board goal setting. I don't think, hopefully hour and a half. It'll go fast. There's a lot of teachers and staff that are gonna be there. The goal for that night is not to make any decisions. It's just really to get a better understanding of who we are. What do our classrooms look like? What are the needs of our students? So just before we go into setting goals, it's just really good to get a good understanding of who our kids are, so this is all about students and staff, and they'll be sharing that with you. So it should be a enjoyable evening. And that is at the community center next to Gambino's.
Is that 5:30 or 6:30?
6:30.
Okay.
We had a couple board members that wouldn't be able to make 5:30, so
Okay.
it'll just be regular 6:30.
No problem.
The last thing is you have a copy. It's, it'll be that time of season. I just wanted you to look at my evaluation. There's a lot of different areas, criteria for you to be thinking about. I will get with Dave to set up just kind of the plan on how, for the board, you want to go about doing that. That's the tool that you've used in the past. You don't like it, you want something different, just tell me. I'll go look for other tools, but you will have to evaluate, since I'm new, a couple times a year for the first few years. You can do it 10 times a year if you want, but
Aren't we?
Well, I was gonna ask-
Required twice. By law, twice.
yes.
So I was gonna ask everybody, like, it's a good tool, everything's on here, there's a lot of redundancy on it, but maybe add some input on if you don't think that this is capturing everything. And there's always, so in the past, we always either hand these to me or mail them to me, and then like they're all get put together, and I've always just summarized, like, just put an X in the column that best suits. It's all like, a lot of times people put numbers or whatever. I feel like these headings up here kind of tell us, so that we're all like filling it out the same. I don't have to bug you to ask, like, what did you mean by this? But then if you feel like something's missing, just add that. And then I will put it all together with everything, and then we'll talk, we'll kick Brad out of the room. We'll talk about it and then do that.
What do you want, just 5?
Oh. Next official board meeting.
Okay, why are there 2?
Why are there 2? Yeah.
I gave you one, he gave you one.
Okay.
That's the other.
Yes,
Okay, so we need to pick one.
they're both
They're
the same.
different.
They're a little different.
They're
This
a
one's
little-
got some boxes on the front page.
This one's got a lot of lines.
This one with the boxes.
So with the
Okay,
box.
boxes, so this one.
That's the one I want.
Okay,
That's the one we've used.
Perfect.
and there's nowhere to like write in comments or anything, this is just a.
They said you can write on
Oh, you just write it.
it.
Or attach another page, but just so that I don't. It's been confusing to decipher how they're filled out every time.
Okay.
I'm good.
I wanna make sure I understand your intent.
Yeah, Matt's not adding nothing up, just put in X.
Anything else?
Are we gonna do a school tour anytime?
So, yes. We're gonna start at the elementary, I'm just. So back to that, and I think I made comment at, one of the Friday reports. if we wanna do school tours, the request is because the teachers get excited knowing you're coming. If we can get all the board members to do it, we'll do one board meeting at a time. As opposed to only a couple of board members maybe. So that was just the request that,
That's fair.
so, but yes. They're all excited back there for school tours.
I love it, actually. I love
Start
it.
at the elementary.
Also, I think every board member should work in the office at least once.
I have worked in the office. I'm good.
I don't think they want me to work.
Me neither.
I thought it was fun.
Everybody good? Pretty good? All right, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind bringing your